Dracula the Impaler, also known as simply The Impaler. With a title like that, you've got a good idea about what this film is going to be about, right?
Wrong.
This film is really nothing to do with vampires or Dracula himself, but it doesn't really mean to say it's actually a bad movie at all. Now, the plot here basically focuses around 7 friends who just, for matter of course, decide they're going to go for a trip to Romania and visit Castle Dracula, because one of them is quite wealthy, and basically we're told he has some kind of dream where he just is seeing himself in this particular Castle Dracula, which I have to say is a little bit of a flimsy motivation, but we'll just go with it. So 7 of these guys, three girls and 4 guys, travel to Romania in this remote castle, Castle Dracula, and there they're greeted by Veronica, who's this sort of beautiful, Romanian kind of woman who is taking care of the castle. And basically, we tell kind of one of these guys is also sort of having some kind of visions as well, and I guess you kind of call him the main guy, if you like. Soon after that, sort of strange things start to happen. There's kind of feelings of uneasiness, and essentially these sort of characters are getting killed off one by some kind of force, and we sort of see some supernatural stuff happening in the background. Some kind of zombie-like characters, or kind of with vampires perhaps. We never really explicitly called vampires, or we never really see them do anything particularly vampiric. And it turns out that, well, I won't spoil it for you, but there's obviously a reason for everything that's happened, and these 7 people were kind of called here as kind of part of a prophecy. And it turns out that each one of these characters is really representing one of the 7 deadly sins, and that's one of the criticisms we'll have about this movie, is the characterizations of these characters are all very, very two-dimensional. We've got one guy who says gluttony, and that's his main character trait, and that's pretty much all he does. We've got one guy who's just a horny bastard, obviously lust, and things like that. They don't really seem to have anything else in their sort of personality other than that. This movie has also got one of the most random death scenes, which does, to be fair, make sense at the end, but it just comes out of nowhere. And you're thinking, what the hell? So I actually found it quite an interesting movie, but it's not a film that I would watch again. So it doesn't really have any kind of rewatchability. But nevertheless, I actually thought it wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't actually too badly sort of directed. But really the script was, I guess, the problem here. Like I said, the characterizations were so kind of flimsy, and unfortunately that was its kind of main letdown. I'm not quite sure where it was shot, but it's obviously the location, shooting is pretty decent. The acting, again, I would say passable for this sort of style of movie. There's maybe a few sort of instances where certain lines just come out a little bit cheesy. The effects, not a huge amount of effects, but there's a couple of instances where green screen looks kind of obvious. In regards to gore, again, there's not a hell of a lot of gore. There's maybe sort of one scene towards the end of the movie where there's a reasonable gore shot, and there's a couple of sort of mild gore shots as well, sort of towards the end of the film. But overall, not a particularly gory or scary movie. But if you're interested in the kind of the Dracula legend, because it is, I say it's not about Dracula, but it's he's not really in it, but it's kind of about the legend of Vlad the Impaler, and it does actually give you some historical facts about the real Vlad Tepes. And obviously, this story is obviously a work of fiction. The whole vampire thing is obviously not real, but there are some roots in kind of it is based on the factual goings on of this Wallachian prince, basically. But overall, I actually found it quite an interesting movie. It could have been better. Obviously it's a relatively low budget film, so that's obviously going to play a part in it. But I actually quite enjoyed it. Mainly because I'm actually quite interested in that kind of stuff. I read some reviews online and it pretty much disliked it. But I actually think they're maybe a little bit unfair, considering this is such a low budget film. It's not going to be for everyone. If you kind of want your standard sort of vampire flick, then you're going to be maybe disappointed here, because there isn't really a lot of that going on. It's more of a kind of supernatural mystery, I would suppose. But if you're kind of interested in something a little bit different, which is kind of loosely connected to kind of the vampire genre, then maybe check it out. I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. I would say it's an above average kind of low budget B movie, horror, whatever you want to call it. Apart from some weak script, and kind of like some poor characterizations and things like that. Anyway, let me know if you've seen it. What did you think? Leave a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.